Gold has been used for thousands of years as a form of currency. There are countries around the world that accumulate large amounts of this valuable commodity. In today's world, gold has many uses aside from adding sparkle to a billionaire's jewelry collection. While the US and other countries stopped using the gold standard long ago, the metal is still widely held by many governments. This is due to its intrinsic value and as a hedge against deflation or other economic calamities, making it a safe haven in times of turmoil. It is still used by many central banks to back their currencies, and many governments have legislation requiring that they hold a certain amount of gold in reserve. Have you ever wondered what countries have the most gold in the world? Let's take a look at the 8 countries that have the largest gold reserves and see what they're doing with it. Before we dive in, make sure you don't miss our next video and hit that subscribe button down below. Number 8. Japan, 765 tons. Japan has the 3rd largest economy in the world with a gross domestic product, or GDP, of $4.97 trillion and is the 7th largest gold hoarder. The country currently keeps 765 tons of gold in its reserves, worth $44.4 billion. Japan's gold reserves could fill 5 tennis courts and pay for the construction of 4 additional cosmopolitan casinos in Las Vegas, which is the 5th most expensive building in the world. Japan also recently found gold in its own land, which they're hoping to exploit to boost reserves in the future. Number 7. Switzerland, 1,040 tons. The Nordic country of Switzerland is known for its happy citizens and its world-class chocolate. Though Switzerland's small total GDP of $103 billion doesn't rank in the top richest nations, it is considered one of the wealthiest countries in the world due to its high quality of living. Its GDP per capita is the 2nd highest in the world at a whopping $86,000, and its citizens enjoy an average annual salary of over $120,000 USD. As a neutral nation with relaxed banking laws, Switzerland also happens to be the banking capital of the world. As such, Switzerland holds a disproportionate amount of its wealth in gold and has the world's largest gold reserves per capita. The Swiss National Bank has kept 1,040 tons in its reserve, whose size is roughly the square footage of a third of a football field and is worth $60.3 billion, which is 60% of its GDP. Unlike other countries, the Swiss constitution allows the Swiss National Bank to purchase and sell gold according to market trends. Therefore, the gold reserves of Switzerland have fluctuated over the last few decades, with a spike between 2010 and 2013. However, in the last few years, Switzerland's gold reserves have remained stable. Number 6. China, 1,948 tons. China has the 2nd largest economy in the world behind the United States, with a GDP of $13.4 trillion. China also happens to be the world's largest gold producer, and its exports account for 12% of global production. Additionally, a recent surge in consumer demand for gold in China has been driven in large part by increasing wealth among its growing middle class. The People's Bank of China maintains 1,948 tons of gold in its reserves, which are about half the size of the White House. These reserves are worth an estimated $113 billion, which is nearly 200,000 times the median household income in the United States. China added more than 100 tons of gold to its reserves in 2019. This buying spree was rumored to be a hedge against an upcoming trade conflict with the US by diversifying its holdings away from the US dollar. However, its reserves have remained stable since then. Number 5. Russia, 2,299 tons. While Russia doesn't rank among the top 10 richest countries in the world with a relatively low GDP of $1.47 trillion, the frosty Eastern European nation has been seriously enamored with gold in recent years. In order to reduce its reliance on the US dollar, Russia has spent $40 billion boosting its gold reserves within the past few years. This spending also enabled Russia to overtake China in the gold standings and made Russia the largest gold buyer in the world for the last 7 years. Currently, the Russian central bank holds 2,299 tons of gold in its reserves, which is equivalent to 11 IMAX movie screens. The estimated worth of Russia's gold is $132.8 billion, equivalent to Bill Gates' current 2021 net worth. Additionally, Russian lands are metal-rich, and the country boasts a billion-dollar gold mining industry. Number 4. France, 2,436 tons. From exquisite Michelin star restaurants to historic palaces, France is known around the world for offering the finer luxuries in life, and their gold is no exception. France ranks as the 6th wealthiest country in the world according to its GDP of $2.78 trillion. Their gold reserves are just slightly larger than Russia, which is a behemoth of a country. Most of France's gold is believed to be stored in vaults underneath the Banque de France in Paris after a repatriation effort from foreign vaults. France has 2,436 tons of gold in its reserves, most of which were stockpiled in the 1950s and 1960s. France's central bank has sold very little gold over the last few years, and the reserves have held steady since 2009. The reserves are worth an estimated $141.2 billion and would cover an area the size of 8.5 NBA-sized basketball courts. Number 3. Italy, 2,453 tons. Though the boot-shaped country located in the Mediterranean Sea has the world's 8th largest economy, it keeps a disproportionate amount of its GDP in gold. While most countries' gold reserves are owned by the state and managed by their central banks, Italy's is actually owned by the Banca d'Italia. The reserves are kept in vaults in Rome, Switzerland, New York, and England. Italy has been able to maintain the size of its reserves over time, and they are backed up by the European Central Bank, aka the ECB. In 2018, the Italian government famously stated that they would not sell a gram of the gold reserve to offset their budget crisis, and they've held true to that promise. Their reserves, which total 2,453 tons, have remained consistent. Italy's reserves, which are worth an estimated $142.2 billion, would cover the square footage of 3 NHL-sized hockey rinks. Number 2. Germany, 3,364 tons. As the 4th richest nation in the world, with a GDP of $4 trillion, Germany keeps its weight in gold. Germany has gold reserves in 3 different cities: Frankfurt, New York, and London. This was a result of concerns over it falling under Soviet control during the Cold War. Germany completed a 4-year repatriation effort in 2017 to bring 674 tons of gold back to their own vaults from the Banque de France and the Federal Reserve of New York. Germany currently holds 3,364 tons of gold in its reserves, worth over $194 billion. If laid out, Germany's reserves would cover slightly more than the square footage of a football field. Gold is also a popular investment in Germany, where 38% of the nation's 69 million adults own physical gold. Collectively, they own over 8,900 tons of gold, half of which is stored as gold bars and coins, and the other half is fine jewelry. Number 1. The United States, 8,134 tons. Considering that the United States is the wealthiest nation in the world, according to its GDP of $21.43 trillion, it's not surprising that it also holds the most in gold reserves. The majority of U.S. gold reserves are held in a fortified vault adjacent to the Army post of Fort Knox, Kentucky, and is managed by the U.S. Treasury Department. Currently, the United States Bullion Depository holds 8,134 tons of gold bullion, which is 4/5 as heavy as the Eiffel Tower. At nearly $58 per metric ton, the U.S.'s gold reserves are worth over $463.8 billion, over 4 times the cost of the most expensive building in the world, the Masjid al-Haram in Mecca. The U.S. gold reserves have largely remained unchanged for the last decade, which means the U.S. has neither sold nor bought a significant amount of gold. In the light of the recent financial crisis, the value of gold has continued to rise and is considered by some to have saved the world from the death of paper money. Countries with gold bullion reserves are better able to weather financial crises and years where stock markets fall and currencies crash, as gold holds its value in times of uncertainty. After learning about the countries with the most gold, how much do you hold in your reserves? Tell us in the comments below. As always, thank you for watching, and we'll see you in our next video.